My name is Chuck Ryan. I'm a Deputy Fire Chief in the Operations Bureau with Fairfax County, Virginia. I've got a little I Love Us fact sheet on the slides here, but just a little background on me. I've been involved with the fire service for almost 21 years now. I started as a volunteer in our agency for a couple of years and went through the hiring process, got hired, and I've been career for 18 plus years now. This topic is one that I travel around and speak about quite a bit because I'm very passionate about it, because I firmly believe that the first-in company officer, regardless of whether you work for FDNY or a small 10-person volunteer department somewhere in the middle of rural America, size up is the same. Size up is no different whether you're running 6 on an engine or 2. Okay? The considerations, the factors, and the things that go into it are the same regardless of who you are and how you serve. And I'm passionate about it because we have too many NIOSH reports that drill back down to inadequate size up. And we'll talk about that a little bit. I'm originally from New York, so I'm not incapable of talking loud. So this is a little bit about our department. About 1,400 career members, supplemented by roughly 300 to 400 operational volunteers. We're nestled in along the Potomac River up in northeastern Virginia, and about 1 million full-time residents. During the work week, that swells to about 1.35 or so due to all the commuters coming in. Busy agency, about 95,000 responses in the last calendar year. We counted them up that we have the report for. And, all hazards, full spectrum, whatever you want to call it. Yes, we do EMS transport as well as fire response. And we're the sponsoring agency for Virginia Task Force 1, one of the 2 international search and rescue teams. And we're the proud host of the World Police Fire Games coming up in 2015 when they'll be back in the United States. And the key thing at the bottom, I think, our budget has been steadily declining. 6 years ago, our budget was $178 million. So we are definitely doing a lot more with a lot less. As you sit here and we talk through this, and I'll move around and I'm going to ask some folks to participate here. I'm not going to single anybody out, but I'll ask people to chime in. As you sit here and you look at the slides and as we talk this morning, I know certain things are going through certain people's minds. And what everybody sees in each of these pictures, all right, is a little bit different. Not everybody is seeing the same thing. And that's the important part, in my mind, about size up, is that you're looking at a wide variety of factors based on your experiences, based on your training, based on your knowledge. And so I want to run this short clip here. It runs about 2 minutes or so. And I want you to listen to the audio, and I want you to ask yourself if you feel you're ready for the first 5 minutes here.
Control, this is Engine 77. We're headed north on Bayfront Expressway. Is there a large fire approximately at the Redwood San Carlos border? Large, must be 50-foot flames in the air.
Zephyr, do you have a location or a general area? We haven't had any reports.
Well, we're just entering the Marsh on-ramp northbound 101, and it looked like it was approximately at the Redwood City San Carlos border, but there's 50-foot flames easy. Big column of smoke coming up. I don't know if that's from your explosion. Stand by. We got multiple streets here. Hold on. We'll be setting up Claremont IC 52.
Down. There's a plane down. We're getting multiple responses started.
I am up for 52. 52 on Command 31. Command 31 on Command 31. 52, go ahead. Ronnie, let's start a third alarm. We've got multiple houses. We're trying to get close. We have extreme heat. We have possibly several blocks on fire at this time.
Okay. That's not a promotional exam simulation. That's a real call. Anybody know where that call was? San Bruno, California, not too far from San Francisco. Natural gas pipeline explosion. What did they think they had? Airplane down, right? Who put that bug in their head? Dispatcher, right? Any dispatchers in the room? Okay, good. Hey, listen. No, don't get me wrong, all right? Underpaid and overworked, and I firmly believe that. But most agencies, like ours, like San Bruno, maybe like yours, their dispatchers don't have fireground experience. They're not firefighters. They're not trained as that. Matter of fact, in our agency, we have a separate county agency that runs public safety communications. So that means the one person that's dispatching fire today is going to be dispatching police tomorrow and animal control the next day. All right? And they get a lot of training and whatnot, but hey, it's not their fault. And they're just relying on what? Telephone calls from citizens. And what do citizens think? They think an airplane's down. But that plants the seed in people's head, whether it's the first in-company officer, whether it's an incoming chief officer, that, hey, we got an airplane in the ground. They're not even thinking that this started from beneath and is coming out. They're thinking it came the other way. But nobody went to work that day in San Bruno thinking they're going to run a call. You know, if you told those guys and gals, hey, in about 2 hours, we're going to run a call where in about 16 or 20 seconds, there's going to be 3 blocks worth of houses on fire, and you're the first one arriving, they'd be like, yeah, right. Okay? So that's why I want to get us in the mindset of thinking, hey, these first 5 minutes of any incident are critical. You know, a lot of that stuff that they dealt with in that call, written off from the get-go, all right? When you got multiple structures off and you show up, and I don't care if you ride 20 people on an engine company, you're not going to do much in the first 5 minutes. The key is about making a little bit of control out of the chaos. So why this is an important topic. 87 firefighter fatalities in calendar year 2011. 20, or roughly 23%, directly related to on-scene fire rescue operations. And what I mean by that is these are firefighters who were trapped, burned up, got disoriented, smoke inhalation, ran out of air, things like that. I'm not talking about, and I'm not taking anything away from this, I'm not talking about folks that had a major cardiac event, a heat exhaustion, a CVA, a stroke type thing, or they ran a call and they went home and you know, died in their sleep, that kind of thing. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about combat-related fatalities in the line of duty right there on the fire ground. Something bad happened right then. All right? You tell, I don't know, 23% to me seems to be a pretty high number. All right? I don't think there's too many other industries that think that 23% of something bad happening to their people would be okay. As of today, 31 firefighter fatalities for this year. 16%, heading towards 17%. And what I ask you, and I've changed my analogy for this. What I ask you is who here has a kid in college? Anybody have college kids? Paying a lot of tuition, right? I've got 2 in college right now. My son calls me and tells me, Dad, I'm failing 16% of my classes. Are you cool with that? I'm not. Okay? Not good. Not good. The analogy I used to use, I said, hey, if your spouse or significant other said that they were faithful to you 84% of the time and 16% they're not, like 3 guys got up and ran out of the room. But so, I don't know what's going on there. So most of these fatalities, when you read the NIOSH reports, most of them are what San Fran had, the low-grade fire. They're not the career, you know, catastrophic, cataclysmic event. They are single-family dwelling fires, townhouse fire, garden apartment fires, occasionally the commercial structure, all right? But typically, it's a small fire, a seemingly routine bread-and-butter event that we all come away from kicking ourselves in the pants saying, what happened? What happened? All right? The fire last year, a little under a year ago in San Francisco, hey, this is a bread and butter fire for the San Francisco Fire Department, a department rooted in tradition, aggressive interior fire attack, and they lose 2 guys. Okay? And when you read the report, it's you know, and it's good, I think, these when agencies do their own internal reports and release them to the public in advance of NIOSH, because NIOSH is a government organization and government takes time. All right? It's very cleansing. It's very healthy. They put this stuff out there and say, yeah, we made some mistakes here. We made some mistakes. Who was in that house when those guys died? No one but them. No one but firefighters. All right? I don't know, you know, I'm all about aggressive firefighting. All right? I know that's become sort of a taboo word, or did for a period of time in the U.S. Fire Service, as long as you're smart about it. And I'm not saying these guys aren't smart or weren't smart. You got to keep your eye on the prize, though. When there's nobody in the house, and you've confirmed that, all right, somebody's burning couch is not worth burying somebody. It's just not. And I know we're all type A personalities and we want to go get it. That's why we're in this profession, whether you do it for free or whether you get a paycheck for it. But you got to keep your eye on the ball. So let's think about keeping ourselves full of clues and not being clueless. I'm going to thank our friends in the Australian TV industry here to give us a civilian example of size up. So just watch these clips. Oops, my bad. Not very good size up. We got another example. Now watch my man in this thing. He's doing all the right things. You probably know someone like this. Good up to the last second, right? One more. And we all know someone who drives a car like this to work. Everybody does it. Who does it? Everybody does it. Whether you're the bucket firefighter riding backwards or forwards now. At NFPA, I don't think lets us ride backwards anymore. Bucket firefighter, driver, officer, okay? Everybody's got a different view of this. The driver, what's the driver thinking about? Apparatus placement, water supply, all right? Access, how can I get to this problem? All right, what's the officer thinking about? Wide variety of things that we're going to talk about. What's the bucket firefighter thinking about? Running, yeah, woohoo! Yeah! Exactly. Do I have my helmet cam on? Yes, exactly. So this kind of illustrates it. What's the cat see? Lunch and dinner, right. What's the kid see? Well, kind of lunch and dinner, something to put in its mouth, but right. What about this one? Anybody ever see that picture before? Anybody see? Who sees the old lady in the picture? Raise your hand. Who sees the young lady? Who sees both? Good job. Good job. To help those out that don't, so you got the old lady, right? Her smile, nose, shawl on her head. But if you look, depending upon you look at it, young lady looking away from the picture, there's her ear, her jawline, that's a necklace, her nose, and her eyelashes. All right? Different people seeing different things with the same picture. So when you do your size up, you're looking at four big items. All right? You're looking at the facts, the probabilities, the possibilities, and then your resources. And that's going to be dependent upon your agency. All right? Tell me some facts about that picture in the upper right. Tell me one fact. Two-story single-family dwelling. Okay. What else? Well involved. Okay, yeah, there's a lot of fire in that house. What do we see in the driveway? Car in the driveway, so it's likely occupied, at least potential. Time of day, it's nighttime, right? What about the picture below? We all know that's a McDonald's. Was a McDonald's. All right? A lot of fire, right? A lot of fire, deep-seated fire. I mean, you look at the window here, the restaurant, the restaurant window, and you see, visible flame that far back into what we know is a wide open area of restaurant. Okay? Probabilities. How about probability that there's people at home in the house fire? Pretty fair, all right? Probability about anybody being alive in this McDonald's here, at least in the front part? Nah. All right. Possibilities, wide variety of things. There's hundreds of them. And then again, your resources. So when do we do size up? And this argument goes back and forth with people. People say, oh, when you're out doing pre-planning, you're sizing up. No, you're not really. You're pre-planning. That's the point of it. But your size up has to start when the tones drop, right? Because that's going to drive what you do and how you do it. Right? But you want all that information that you've gathered during your pre-incident planning, when you've been to that same house, 400 times for medical calls, or the same style house, but it now comes in for the kitchen fire, you know where that kitchen is in that house, even if you've never been in it. Okay? Because you know what it's like in other houses where you've been in it 100 times to help grandma off the floor, or treat a sick child, or reset a smoke alarm, or whatever. Now, I have struggled for the years to try to find a way to get rich quick doing this by coming up with the points of size up and make them be Chuck Ryan, but it doesn't work. So I stick with the 13 that everybody knows: construction, occupancy, apparatus staffing, life hazard, water supply, auxiliary appliances, street conditions, weather, exposures, area, building size, time, location and extent of fire, and the potential for hazardous materials and other bad stuff. The 13 points of size up, whether you used Wallace was hot, coal was wealth, doesn't matter. But these are the things that you need to be focused on as a first-in officer as you roll up on the scene, as you approach and roll up on the scene. So let's break them apart. Construction. Sorry, I'm getting over a cold. What do we see up in the upper left? Right, bowstring truss, right? It looks to be like a strip mall of some kind, liquor store involved, but firefighter killer, bowstring truss roof, all right? Lower left, masonry building, right? Type 3, ordinary construction, Main Street, USA. Right. Lower right, this is a townhome. It's the state flower of Virginia. They're everywhere. Type 5, lightweight, wood frame construction. And in the upper right, a fire-resistive building, multifamily dwelling. All right. How you fight the fire, how you attack the fire, if you are going to attack the fire and commit resources and commit people into harm's way, vary greatly based upon the construction of the building. So we think about, hey, how cut up is this place? Is it a wide open place like this room, or a Best Buy, or a Menards, or something like that? Or is it a single-family home, or a small apartment? How cut up is the place? Or is it an office with cubicles, which makes it even worse? Is the structure itself contributing to the fire loading, or are we dealing with just a contents fire? Knowing the building types, all right, type 1, fire resistive, type 2, non-combustible, type 3, ordinary, type 4, heavy timber, mill construction, and type 5, wood frame. Where are the voids, and has the fire gained access to the voids? And lastly, what's the building's ability to resist collapse? Right? Whether it's catastrophic major collapse, or whether we're talking about localized areas of collapse. And knowing a little bit about building construction goes a long way here. Next, we worry about the occupancy itself. What is it? Is it the church? All right. Is it the multifamily garden apartment dwelling? Is it a high-rise? And the key is, what's the intended use versus what's the actual use? The picture on the lower left, what does that building look like to you? It looks like a school. It was a school. Matter of fact, it was my elementary school. That's PS 19 in Albany, New York, which no longer is now a public school. It's now fancy schmancy apartments. All right? They didn't need the school anymore. Folks, my folks, everybody in the neighborhood got old, so the city had to do something. So they sold the school, and now it's developed into apartments. All right? Building on the right, house, big house, standard single family, fairly large single family dwelling, detached single family dwelling. The key with this, and if we had more time, I'd play some audio for you from a fire in Loudoun County, Virginia from a couple of years ago. In our area, and maybe where you are, it's very transient. People are constantly moving in and out. .com, where government, defense contractors, military, people are constantly coming and going. And quite honestly, if you live in maybe Plainfield down the street here, people probably know who their next door neighbor is. These people probably have no clue who their next door neighbor is. Right? They don't know. And there was a fire in Loudoun County, Virginia, which is a neighboring jurisdiction of ours, back in Memorial Day weekend of 2008. Pretty big house fire. They got very lucky. They almost lost 3 people. But the initial call is very interesting because the call taker is talking to the citizen reporting who is the next door neighbor, and she says, "Is anybody home?" And the lady goes, "I don't know." And she said, "Well, is the house occupied?" And the lady's outside on the phone. She says to her neighbor, "Does anybody live in this house?" It's the next door neighbor. Doesn't even know if anybody lives there. So you don't really know what's on the inside all the time. And you may not know if a house is occupied or not. All the indicators of occupancy may be there, and it may not be occupied. And by occupied, I mean vacant, as opposed to just not having anybody home at the time. The area and height. This is a big one. Big box store. You see a lone engine company sitting down here in the lower left here of this photo, lower right of the photo, lower left. And you can tell that that building, that whatever that is, that warehouse-style structure, dwarfs that company. All right? You get a fire in that kind of a building, and you roll up and you see a small amount of smoke rolling out of the front door of the structure. Okay? You better be concerned that there's a big fire in that big building somewhere. Because unless it's a trash can or a cash register on fire in the front, there's something generating enough smoke in that store to overcome the 30-foot ceiling and push it out the front door where you're walking in. Right. The height of the building, upper right is the West Washington Street fire in Chicago, and inside the loop, non-sprinklered high-rise is the Cook County Administration Building. And you can see they're using some pretty creative tactics to reach the fire that's out of the reach of the aerial master stream. And in the lower right, one of these block-long multifamily dwellings, not exactly the biggest building in the world, six above ground, 6, maybe 7 stories. Not huge in terms of vertical height, but lengthwise, long hallways. All right, you don't know what your occupant load is going to be. Probably 24/7 life hazard, but again, the area and the height of the building will drive your tactics, and it has to be taken into account in your size up. Your potential fire area, all right? Your potential exposure area, all of which we'll talk about a little bit in water supply when we get there. Changes in grade. Classic NIOSH report. If you get a chance to read it, Washington, D.C. Fire Department, DCFD, Cherry Road Northeast Fire. Run-of-the-mill, bread and butter, row home, middle row townhome, row home for them, brownstones type structure. Changes in grade affected the folks working on floor number 1 in the front. All right. We're also talking to people who thought they were operating on floor number 1, but they were on the Charlie side. They didn't realize there was a change in grade. 2 people talking about the same thing, but using different terminology, and they wound up creating flashover conditions which killed a couple of guys. If you read the report, it's actually very interesting, and it really, I think, drove home the point about making sure, especially incident commanders, are on the same page if you have an Alpha division and a Charlie division. But first in company officers, too. When you make that lap, hey, if there's a change in grade, let somebody know. Let somebody know. Because once you've committed to interior operations, you're hoping that they know that there's a change in grade, especially if you got fire on 2 levels. What type of building is it? What's the shape? Is it L-shaped? Is it H-shaped? Circular structures. The star, hub, and spoke structures like nursing homes are, generally the nursing stations and the reception areas in the middle, and then they have the wings going off to the side because they've got a dementia wing because they don't want those folks just wandering out into the public space and whatnot. So all things to know about, all gathered through pre-planning, but you got to know it when you show up. And then if you live in a space saucer, that's pretty awesome, I think. What's the life hazard? What is the life hazard? Guys are up there making an overground ladder rescues in a multifamily dwelling. You got a high-rise job in the lower left with fire on an upper floor. What's an advantage to that, by the way? To having that fire where it is? Because it's darn near the top. So you're right, you can have, that building can be chock full of people from one floor below the fire on down. It's not really going to, hopefully, get to be that bad, or else there'll be an after-action report. But your life hazard's limited vertically, basically. What about the picture in the center on the bottom? What's one thing that stands right out at you? It's being renovated or demolished, exactly. So chances are your life hazard pretty low. All right, life hazard probably, if the building's completely under renovation, there's not going to be any tenants in there. These two photos on the right side there, that's Virginia Beach, Virginia, and honey, there's an F-18 in the courtyard. Middle of the day, plows into a garden apartment structure in middle of Virginia Beach, and unbelievably no fatalities, but a very high life hazard. What's another, you see that, well, it doesn't have to be a military aircraft, but planes do fall out of the sky on occasion. You think you have some other life hazards presented by that? Fuel, yep, definitely fuel. We don't know if that thing's carrying whatever. Yeah, ordnance, right? I don't want to be around to find out if it is, So your life hazard is the primary factor that drives your decision making. All right. Occupancy and time of day are the two critical ones. What is the structure and what's it being used for, and what's the time of day? The fire in the single-family detached dwelling at 2 in the morning with 2 cars in the driveway and the classic tricycle strewn about the front yard kind of thing is a different fire, and you're going to go at it the different way than the strip mall, the Tiffany's nail place that's well off at 2 in the morning. Chances are there's nobody dying in Tiffany's. Okay. Location, extent of fire always go. Of course, we play a big factor in that, but occupancy, time of day are your big ones. Water supply. When we looked at the very first photo, I said that's what the driver's thinking about. Somebody shouted out water supply, and obviously it's huge because without it, the fire will ultimately they all go out when all the fuel gets consumed. But you need a sustainable water supply. So you got to know, do you have a system? Right. Pre-plan your potential problem areas. Most folks know their hydrant areas and their non-hydrant areas. Folks know if the hydrant areas have poor water pressure. And I'll tell you right now, it's been talked about, you have a big fire, ask the water authority to bump up the pressure. That's like asking for an act of Congress to come through in about a week. It ain't going to happen. A municipal water supply system does not respond that quickly. So know those in advance, and if you're going to need extra water, ask for extra resources. Okay? Your fire flow estimates, and this is the scratch pad stuff here. For light fire loading, 10 gallons per minute for every 100 square feet of involved area. Medium fire loading, meaning your light commercial, 20 GPMs per every 100 square feet of involved area, and then for your high fire loading, your rack storage, your auto parts and supply stores, paint shops, things like that, figure 30 GPM per 100 square feet of involved area. What this tells you, what it should tell you, and this is not a tactics class, but this will tell you that if you catch a fire when it's small, the 1 3/4 hand line properly deployed with a good stream can put a lot of fire out quickly. All right? So the decision is almost a no-go, a go-no-go one, where you say, hey, can I get this thing right now with what I've got? And if you're running staffing of 2 or 3, anybody here run with 2 on an engine company? God bless you. I honestly don't know how you do it. We have 4, and it proves challenging at times. But so you got a driver, pump operator, and an officer or firefighter. You're going to pull a 2.5 and manhandle that thing by yourself. I mean, it can be done, but it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. So knowing your resources and the ability to deliver water to the fire is a big component of this. All right. and your delivery methods. Are you doing a rural water supply operation where you're drafting? Anybody here come from an area, work in an area where there's no municipal water supply system, you rely solely on drafting pits? We have areas in our county where people build 20,000 enormous homes, and there's not a fire hydrant within 5 miles of them. It's crazy. And they're the outlying areas of the county. But those people need to know it's going to be a very bad day if their house catches on fire, because we don't do rural water supply very well. We've got this grand manual, and it's nice. It's very detailed about long driveway operations, short driveway operations, this and that. And I've yet to really see it work very well, to be honest, because we don't practice it routinely. We don't do it often enough to be good at it. Rural departments are fantastic at it. Neighboring jurisdiction of ours, Hurricane Isabel, came up the East Coast several years ago and knocked out the power supply and water pumping capabilities for most of Fairfax County, Arlington County, Virginia, City of Alexandria. And Arlington County, Virginia, because they don't need it, they don't have hard sleeves on their pumpers. So they don't have a way to extract water out of a standing water source. So we had to pre-position some of our tankers, or water tenders for NIMS purists, resource typing purists, our tankers closer to the jurisdictional border, so that if they had a major event in Arlington, they could get some water on the fire other than what's just carried in the booster tanks. All right. That's a picture of me in 3rd grade. No, it's not. But anyway, and I do hate math. But the NFA fire flow formula is another way to calculate your water supply, but you just got to know the limitations of it, because a lot of books teach it. There's folks out there talking about it. It's still valid. Okay? Your needed fire flow is the length times the width of your building, of the area, divided by 3. You add an exposure charge of 25%, and you multiply it by the percentage of involvement. Now, that being said, mathematical accuracy up to 50% of the total fire area. So a mathematical equation that has a 50% accuracy rate is a little questionable to me. But the more important part is this: the non-accelerated ordinary fire growth with ordinary combustibles. Unless you live like in a house built and sustained by Ethan Allen furniture, you don't have ordinary combustibles in your house, unless it's like the newspaper laying on the coffee table. Okay, we all know fabrics. All right, synthetic fabrics, the carpet, wall coverings, the furniture, everything, the stuffing in the furniture, all of it is synthetic. So I'm not bashing this formula by any stretch, but you got to know its limitations. And if this is what you use for calculating fire attack flow, just know where it came from, the history behind it. And it's very interesting if you watch the NIST video of the what they call the legacy room and the modern room, the side-by-side. Anybody seen that? All right. Watch it. It's a little dry. It's, again, NIST, they're scientists, all right, and very passionate about helping the fire service. It's kind of a dry video watching this stuff go, but it's amazing that the modern room goes to flashover in less than 4 minutes, and the legacy room never really gets there. It kind of huffs and puffs at about the 24, 25-minute mark, all right. So, needless to say, the vast majority, and why is it? Why do people have this synthetic furniture in their house? It's cheap. You get nice stuff for less cost. So, hey, my house is full of it. No knock on it, but again, from your fire flow for attack purposes, know what you're dealing with, and if you're with an agency or company that uses the NFA formula for calculating, just know where it came from and its limitations. Auxiliary appliances. Right? One thing we don't want to mess with too much, unless on the side you have a job as a fire protection engineer or a sprinkler installer. There have been some really big fires that have been assisted by firefighters playing with the fire pumps. Right? But these are your standpipe sprinklers and your automatic fire suppression systems, your foam systems, Halon, dry chem, whatever you have. And I actually found this photo and the picture of the standpipe hiding behind the bush. Because typically that's what happens. You get to one of these commercial structures or a residential structure that's sprinklered and standpiped, and there's a car parked in front of it, or the trash dumpster is put in front of it, or you can't find it, or it's out of service. So be on the lookout for these things. Know where the FDCs are, again, gathered through pre-planning. The time to start looking for them is not the day you go there for the first time for a fire. Street conditions and special matters. All right. Apparatus is not getting any smaller. All right. With the EPA, with the pollution regulations, the size of the engines is increasing simply to accommodate all the pollution control items. Street construction is a constant, regardless of where you are. Narrow streets, and then flooded streets. Obviously, the folks in LA City didn't expect to drive their pumper into a sinkhole. It just happened that way, but there's going to be some paperwork over that. That had to be an interesting ride for a couple of seconds anyway. Yeah, there's another one. Right. Parking lots, again, keep in mind, parking lots, they could be your friend, they can be your enemy, depending upon what time of day, right? Is the parking lot full or empty? Is it full of snow? We don't get that much snow where we are, but for us, that's like a major snowstorm right there. I think it's about 3.5 inches of snow on the ground. The stores get cleaned out of diapers and bread for some reason. Gates, security gates, and at least on this one, they've got some metal running off to the side of each of the pillars. I've actually seen homes where these people, they'll put up the automatic security gate, and then there's nothing beyond the columns. So you're just basically preventing people from turning around in your driveway. It's kind of bizarre. And then being able to get to the problem itself. Can you physically get there and try to avoid becoming part of the problem? And the last few points here for this portion, the weather. Right? Fire in the upper left is Richmond, Virginia. Virginia Commonwealth University, dorms under construction. And on a very windy day, this major fire in downtown Richmond, which sparked numerous spot fires, that's basically the main drag in downtown Richmond. 40-mile-an-hour winds and a lightweight building under construction, a very large lightweight building under construction, huge fire load. Heat issues, drought conditions, and then the snow. That's the brothers up in Toronto having a bailout. I don't know if you've ever seen that video, but it's pretty impressive. Garage fire that extended into the house and caught them on the upstairs. So if it's really hot, it's going to take a toll on you. It's going to, people work really hard and then they're done. And the thing with heat-related issues, heat fatigue, is you don't bounce back. It's not like cold, because when you get cold, what can you do? You can get warm, right? Well, you can't get cool, really, after you're overheated. That's basically an IV and a ride to the hospital. So if you're in a position where you're running a call and it's a 90-degree, 100-degree day, and it's especially if you're not accustomed to that kind of weather, if it's not the norm. Phoenix, they do it all the time. They're accustomed to that kind of stuff. It gets hot and humid for us, but on those 100-degree days, we have guys flaking out on every call. So plan ahead, call for resources early. If it's cold, slow, people are going to slip, trip, and fall on the ice. Getting to the event can be a challenge just by itself. And then the wind-driven fires, and the picture on the left is a house fire we had just the other day. It was Easter Sunday, and for whatever reason, the homeowner thought on a day that there's 25-mile-an-hour winds gusting to near 40, it'd be a good idea to put candles outside, Easter candles. Bad idea. Don't ever do that. That thing was off to the races, consumed the house, and it's basically a total loss. A little illustration of the wind here and how it can affect operations. And we'll talk about the video a little bit afterward, but I want you to watch, first off, I want you to listen to it. All right, and you'll hear a point in the video where you hear the wind become an issue. And then I want you to watch the hose streams, and we'll talk about it after this video runs. It runs about a minute or so. Hear the wind? It's pretty dramatic once you come past that stand of trees. Wind's not helping any either. Holy cow, it's on fire. I got to get to the donut shop. Just kidding.
I sent him home. All right, we'll just call you these guys. Just keep an eye on me.
What do you think that's for? The engine driver. Move. All right. In that particular instance, the wind actually worked to their advantage because it kept it away from the house next door. All right. Very lucky he didn't run into a crown fire in that stand of pine trees next to it. But what'd you notice about the hose lines? The hose streams?
Somebody was on the other side.
Right. Where were they attacked? And I'm not, hey, I used to run in a battalion where I ran a lot of calls with Loudoun County. I live in Loudoun County, so I'm good with this. Where were they attacking that fire from? They were attacking it from the Alpha side, right? They came in the front door, all right? Where was the seat of the fire? The Charlie side, all right? And they don't have resources on the Charlie side until very late in the video. You see they're putting some water on the fire. So what they're getting is hose lines going into outer space, right? They're not putting any fire out. I mean, they may be knocking down some fire on the interior, but they're not putting the fire out, all right? Very dangerous situation. We have encountered in our agency this numerous times, and illustrates the critical importance of getting a grip on what is going on and taking a lap, all right? Seeing what's happening on the back side of the house before you commit to interior operations. We have a policy, well, we have an agency that we surround, the City of Fairfax, two-station department. They have an internal directive that says you are not to commit a hose line to operation on the interior of a structure until you've either seen the rear or have had a credible report from the rear. Pretty extreme, pretty dramatic, but we've had enough incidents in Northern Virginia that back that up, that decision making, and a lot of that goes, and I don't want to get too far ahead of myself in the presentation here, but it goes into the decision making by the initial company officers. Good people making not necessarily the best decisions for a variety of reasons. Some of it's due to excitement, some of it's due to lack of experience. So to develop, we talked about not losing the house next door. Exposures are a huge problem. Closely spaced buildings, auto ignition caused by radiant heat, big issue. This fire in the lower left here is a row of townhomes, another wind-driven fire, Herndon, Virginia. I was the battalion chief on that fire. We gutted 5 structures and damaged 3 more with fire, and I got promoted to deputy chief a month later. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure what the message I was sent there was, but hey. And we have some audio from that fire in a little bit. Picture in the lower right. What do we notice about these buildings, these small houses here? Which look at this one right here. What do you see on the windows? Looks like it's an abandoned or derelict structure. Definitely well, I say vacant in the sense that nobody's legitimately living in that place. I mean, there may be squatters in there, who knows, but the windows are boarded up. All right. House on the right, all right, on the Delta side though, yeah, siding's missing, but it looks like they have window coverings there. It might be a lower income neighborhood. It's actually from Detroit. So you've got the main house, the fire building itself is pretty well off. I mean, there's a lot of fire in there. You can see it through the front window. It's burning stem to stern. So you're going to focus on exposure protection initially, right? You'd want to. Right? I mean, yeah, you want to get the fire, but let's try to have it, not go to the block of origin. You've got some fire on the Bravo exposure, all right? And you can see the siding of the Delta exposure off-gassing a little bit. Where you think, and I'm not saying there's a right or wrong answer here, would you commit your exposure line to the Bravo side or the Delta side? If you only had one, where would you put it? Room is split. I hear both Bravo and Delta, and I get both parts of it, because the one side is, hey, this structure is possibly somebody's still their home, even if it's a little dilapidated. It still could be somebody's residence. Let's try to save that and worry. Basically, this is just a big shed. The flip side of it is, well, if we write off the other one, where are we going to stop this thing? Because now we got two houses off, and if you're in the city of Detroit and you got an urban fire department and municipal fire department, a lot of resources coming, that's one thing. If you're a small department and your next help is 15 minutes away, what do you do? It's what they call the true Hobson's choice. You're damned if you don't. So when you're thinking in your mind about your actions, your tactical actions, your RECIO, right? Exposures is the second one down. Life hazard is the first, right? So exposure second. Let's save what we can. A little bit of building triage here. And the severity of your exposure, whether it's the most severely, in his book, in John Norman's book, he talks about the types of exposures. You have the most severely exposed structure, and then you have the most severe exposure. And the distinction being the most severe exposure is the one that's got the most potential for loss, okay? Whereas the most severely exposed one may be that shed. That may be your most severely exposed as an unoccupied dwelling, and you got a nursing home next door, which is your more severe exposure. And it all depends on the location and extent of the main body of fire. Which one is going to be put in harm's way first? Apparatus and staffing. All right. Further into your size up package here, do you have the luxury of running 5 and 6 members on an engine company or a truck company? We run with 4 on engines. We have 8 heavy rescues, 4 on our heavy rescues, and 3 on our ladder companies. For a jurisdiction with over 1 million people, we are woefully understaffed for our ladder companies, I can tell you that right now. And unfortunately, our elected officials, either they don't get it or they don't care to get it yet. We all know what will change that sometimes. I hope we don't get to that point. And like I said, for guys here that are running with 2, God bless you, because you're doing 5 people's work with 2 people, and I don't know how you do it. So your apparatus and your staffing, and it's not just about the numbers, right? It's about who the people are. Our department right now, as are many departments, going through the Vietnam era retirements. All those guys that got hired in the 70s are now, 70s, late to mid to late 70s, are starting to punch out. They're retiring. They're going. So we've got people coming in droves into our department, and it's not uncommon for us. We promote to lieutenant now at 5 years. It used to be 3. We promote at 5, or you're eligible at 5. It's not uncommon if you might have a driver that's got 2, maybe just newly promoted. Our drivers are called technicians, so they can promote at 2 years. So you might have a driver that's got 3 years, and you got a lieutenant that's got 5 years, 8, and then you could have a rookie firefighter who's got 0 time, got a minute and a half in the fire department, and then you got another firefighter who may have 5 years on or so. So you've got a combined experience on a crew of 4 people of maybe 12 years and less sometimes, and we want them to make good decisions, the right decisions. Sometimes people stumble, and it's not their fault. I see it as our fault. I'm senior management. We have to do things to train these people to raise the bar to get them higher. And we talk about experience, and experience is a huge word. And there's no way we can replicate the experience that firefighters had in the 60s and 70s, and maybe a little bit into the early 80s. All right, there's no way we'll ever get that back, because the structure fires are declining. All right, building codes are getting better. Prevention codes are getting stronger. There's teeth behind them, financial penalties, so people are more inclined to play play nicely. And so we're not getting that. So what do you do it with? Well, it's everything, in my view, and this is my little soapbox here, it's everything from sitting around the coffee table at the firehouse or the kitchen table and basically talking out a fire. I mean, we've all done it. We've talked out hundreds of fires. But talking about it, getting in people's minds, these less experienced folks. If you have access to computer simulations, we say, yeah, hey, Chuck, chief, computer simulations, they're not worth anything. Well, I'll tell you what, I don't know how you got here, but I got on here in an airplane, and knowing what I know about the aviation industry, senior pilots, they don't have to take a check ride in an airplane. They requal in a simulator. So they're flying this hunk of metal through the sky at 700 miles an hour with 300 people behind them, and they did it on a computer. So why won't it work for us? And it's a cultural resistance, an internal cultural resistance to embrace new things. This is fire service's 200 years of tradition unimpeded by progress. Not entirely true, but in some cases, yes, because we're saying, hey, man, we didn't learn about it that way. We learned about it by getting, our noses snotty and getting our faces bloodied and bellying in, and we just can't create that for the new people. So we have to find ways to at least get it in their brains. And let's face it, I'm 50 years old, and I see some folks in here I know are older than me, and I see folks in here I know are much younger than me. I got a son who's 18, a daughter who's 20. They don't talk to me on the phone. They Skype with me. Okay, they send me Facebook messages. They learn in different ways, right? And our new workforce, and this is a whole other program I have, our new workforce is all about different ways of learning. So don't discount it right out of the bat, okay, right out of the gate. There's ways to get people the information, the training, without having to do it the old-fashioned way. But the answer is not to sit around and bemoan the fact that these new folks never will have the experience to lead us. Because guess what? We were all those new folks at one point in time. All right? We were all those new folks. So your apparatus and staffing, your resources, your human capital. What type of equipment do you have available to you? Where we are, we're lucky. We're resource rich. We get a ton of federal money thrown at us because of where we are in the National Capital Region. We get all kinds of nifty gizmos and toys that basically become enormous dust catchers. But our foam unit, we got mid-mount towers, we got all this great stuff. Chicago has their squads or their snorkels. I wish we had a snorkel. I love those things. But, hey, you make do with what you got. And that factors into your size of what do I have available to me to successfully put out this fire? And where is help coming from? Your location and extent of fire. All right. Picture in the upper left. Just looking at that building, where do you think that fire is? Where's the seat of the fire? Rooftop. Right? Somebody said the roof. Rooftop. Look at the windows. My little laser. There we go. Not even a puff of smoke coming out. There's roof. It's what it is, a Burlingame, California fire outside of San Francisco. It's roofing materials on fire. Right? Looks huge. I mean, it could be a big fire, but you don't have the building itself involved yet. This one here, wind-driven fire. Okay, that was the original fire. That was the original fire building. Demolition completed. Demolition underway. Demolition starting. Picture in the upper right. Where is that fire? Basement. And it's getting it, right? Hazard. You see a hazard there? See the gas meter? Bad juju, as they say. Very bad right there. That's small house, a lot of fire. That basement is a furnace right now, literally. What about this one in the lower right? Where's that fire? Attic. Okay. Lightning strike. Thunderstorm had passed through. Lightning strike to the house. We're burning the attic. All right. It's dropped down. It's the vinyl siding. It's the same thing. It's a hip-style roof, and some of the roof has fallen down in front. But that's, yeah, see the black smoke? My laser is dying here, but see the black smoke? That's siding material that's burning right there. There's no involvement. When this picture was taken, there's no involvement in the interior of the house yet. Right. Where the interior involvement came is, what do we normally do on these fires? What's our normal tactical response to these fires? Put the aerial up? Right. If you can't get it from underneath, then you're not going to put this fire out from underneath at this point. because there's nothing to throw the water against. Go back to the Loudon video. You're just going to shoot streams of water into outer space. So what do? Put up the aerial device, right? 1 second, I'll get you. You put up the aerial device, and what do? We throw 1,000 gallons a minute on it. And then we tend to bring the roof down into the second floor and the second floor into the first floor. Yes, sir? Were you? This 501? Okay.
There's a video on YouTube of our ladder truck.
Yep.
Going to this fire, set up the aerial level. The guy just put a camera on the truck probably 10 minutes prior to the fire.
Gentleman saying Manassas Fire Company 501 in our area. There is a great video on YouTube, and if it's the camera's mounted on the bucket of the tower. It's a great video to watch. Something to think about if you have the capability to do it, and it's challenging in these closely spaced buildings when and this is common for us in Northern Virginia. If you can do it, a horizontal attack on that fire versus a vertical attack might help you a little bit, might. At the end of the day, what's going to happen? Chances are they're going to come in and they're either going to tear the house down or they're going to take the second story off and rebuild from the top up, right? So it's a trade-off. The challenge with a horizontal attack on a fire like that from an elevated master stream is you're going to push burning embers and whatnot possibly onto nearby structures. So it's 50-50. But the traditional response is we put the master stream up because hose lines, hand lines are not going to get that fire. So your top floor fires in high-rise buildings, challenging because of the reflex time it takes you to get there, or in any multi-story building, but also helpful in the sense that you don't have as much of a life hazard when you're dealing with a fire on the top floor. Below-grade fires, again, very challenging. The key with below-grade fires is knowing there's a basement, all right? Making sure that you're aware that the structure actually has a sub-level or a below-grade level. A lot of times, and they're, UL has a video out, and it's a great video about the TGI floor joists and how quickly they burn. And they interview a crew, and I want to say they're from Wisconsin, although I don't remember. And there's a gal who's a captain, and her and the firefighter, and they're talking, and they talk about we went in the front door and we went right into the basement. Well, for the purposes of the video, to explain how weak those floor joists are when attacked by fire is great. But I'm a little concerned when I see that about the tactical information there, because it doesn't tell us if they made a decision to go in the front door after doing a 360 and noticing there was a basement on fire, but they went in the front door anyway, or if they just did what we do every day in the training academy, threw the line in the shoulder, flaked it out in the yard, and in through the front door and down into the basement. All right? Good educational video for building construction. I'm not really sold for the tactical portion of it. The key is know if the building has a basement before you commit to the interior, and know if the basement's involved. Fires out of the reach of ladders, your hot smoke, and again, this is some of the Dave Dodson stuff, but the thick black boiling smoke coming off. I mean, that's the roof of the camper top on the pickup burning, but still some hot smoke there, and there's some pretty good involvement running up into the attic of this house, and it's, this part of the house, the right side of the house is uninvolved, but you're getting some pressurized smoke coming out of the gable vent on the other end. So, and see what the smoke is doing, where it's going, and what it's telling you. Time. Time has a lot of facets to it. It can be time of year. All right, picture in the upper left, we know it's not summer and it's not springtime, so it's either winter or fall. The leaves are off the trees. Does that have a impact on your firefighting? And it can, with respect to the conditions that can lead up to flashover. If you read some of the science on that, what the relative humidity is in comparison to the temperature and yada yada. You don't have to be a meteorologist, but the time of year from the fire attack standpoint is important. Burn time. Upper right, has this thing been getting it for a while, and we're going to lose the building before we even get a chance to start fighting the fire? All right. Nighttime, daytime, all right, time of day, as we talked about back in assessing the life hazard, and then also time of year with respect to what's on the inside of the structure. That's Christmas season in one of our malls, and the fire loading is off the chain right there because, hey, Christmas decorations, and they're all flammable, all right. So people's homes are the same thing. And what do people love at Christmas time especially? Candles, right? We actually had a fire not too long ago where people still had real candles on their Christmas tree, trying to go the traditional route. Yeah. I'm going to show you a video here. This runs close to 4 or 5 minutes. Let me set the stage for you, and then I'll let the video roll. January of last year, townhouse fire in the Springfield area, which is one of our more urban areas of the county, I guess, heavily suburban, mildly urban. Saturday morning, and the background to this is young child, family of 4 lives there, mom, dad, adult son, and a small child. Small child is a diabetic. Small child woke up in the middle of the night, his blood sugar was low, wakes his mom up, she makes him some food, sends him back to bed. About 3 hours later, it gets to be near daylight, about 7 a.m. or so. Child wakes up again, says he's still hungry. Mom's knowing, hey, I can't overload you with food, go back to bed. Well, she goes back to bed, kid goes downstairs and starts cooking. Decides he's going to fry some egg rolls in a frying pan. Kid goes out, watches cartoons, and he falls asleep on the couch. Kitchen fire ensues. When you'll see a Google map come up here in a second, and you'll see a red dot in the lower right. The red dot is the fire station. There's an arrow showing the route of travel, and then there's a Google map pointer on the structure. And then we'll talk about it a little more after the video is done running.
Units responding.
We're going in the second one.
Units responding to the townhouse fire on Clouser Court. Be advised that it states everyone is out of the house.
Did you hear that? Everyone out of the house?
0756.
Engine 422 is on the scene. Engine, it's a 3-level townhouse from all 3 sides. Got fire on the first floor, smoke showing from all 3 sides. Advance an engine 3/4, request transfer command.
Step engine 422 on scene and unit turn. Fire on the first floor showing. Engine 3/4, transfer command. Battalion 4-5 redirect.
Engine 422, Pep. Spoke with a homeowner, everybody is out. We'll be advancing a engine 3/4 to the first floor.
10th floor, everyone is out, maintaining first floor. Direct to Battalion 4-5 redirect.
Battalion 4-5 direct, have second due engine, take command there when there.
10th floor, direct engine 4-5 direct.
Engine 4-5.
57.
Engine 426 to Fairfax. Did 22 give a layout or anything? Water supply.
Engine 422 to engine 426. We got our own water. Sorry about that.
Look at the change in smoke conditions with the
Okay, no
ventilation. And I want you to watch the window right there.
Engine 426 is on the scene. I'll go ahead and establish Clouser Court Command.
See the fire in the window?
On side Alpha, the structure taking second to assignment.
10th floor, engine 426 on scene, establishing Clouser Court Command. Side Alpha, the structure taking second due. 2750. Preston, 3800.
Engine 45 is on the scene. We'll take the third due assignment.
There goes.
10th floor, engine 45, third due assignment.
Battalion 404 is on the scene. We're going to make it clear in the front yard. Oh,
That unit that got cut off.
all fives on the scene.
The county full phone direct take. Going to do a lap around, take command in front of the structure. Tell 45 I'm director on scene. Was there another unit that had traffic?
Command to Fairfax.
Go ahead.
At Medic 422, report to the command post. We had a flashover on the first floor. There probably at least one time. Two additional medic units.
10-4, we'll get you 2 additional medic units. I copy Medic 422 to report man post. You had flashover on the first floor. Was there anything else? Traffic got cut off.
Command to truck 422.
That was on my shift. I got there shortly after it was determined it was not, our fire investigator said it actually was not a flashover, although it had all the indicators of one. They call it a rapid fire progression event. I don't know the real difference. I'm sure I know there's science behind it, but that was very humbling for me as a shift commander, knowing that, we almost lost 5 guys that day, like that. And from the time the engine marked on scene until the fire really starts getting it is 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Back about 45 seconds off of that, so you're looking at about 150 or so from the time they started to advance the hose line through the front door until it flashed over on them. And that's, to me, when I went back and looked, our training division took that video, and there's actually a citizen video on YouTube, and they compiled it with the times and whatnot. But that, to me, is the first 5 minutes, okay? By the grace of God, the only thing we had to do was replace some turnout gear. And there were some factors that worked to their advantage in terms of the building's construction, the interior compartmentation, the way that it's an end unit townhouse, older style townhouse, and when you go in the front door, you can see from the front door out the kitchen window, which is where they could see the fire. And then there's a cutout to go into the living room and dining room area, and then there's a partition wall that runs almost the length of the house, and there's a small access doorway to get from the kitchen into the dining room. So that wall is what prevented them from being burned up. That wall is also what allowed the fire to progress the way it did, capture the superheated gases on one side of the structure when they're operating on the other. Like I said, we're resource rich a lot of times for our fires, except in some of our more outlying station areas. Companies are right on top of each other. But 1:45 into it, 2 minutes into it, that's going to be one engine, one truck, maybe just one engine. So it's a 2-line fire, but who's going to pull a second line? There's nobody there to do it. Truck guys are doing truck work. Engine guys are doing engine work. Everybody's doing the right thing, and we damn near killed them. Well, I didn't say that. The fire damn near killed them. More on that. The reason I asked you to watch the ventilation, and the script rolls by kind of fast. When the smoke alarms went off in the house, the kid was the first one to hear them because mom and dad are upstairs with the bedroom door closed, asleep. Adult son in the back bedroom, his door's closed, he's asleep. The kid is actually awoken by the smoke alarm, runs upstairs, gets his parents up, and one by one the dad gets everybody out of the house. But as he's going, he's opening windows on the second floor. Okay? So it created, as soon as that front door opened and then those windows started to be vented by the truck crews, it created an air track that set the stage for what you saw there. But again, very, very lucky. And again, we had a critique, and I know the first-in officer, very experienced guy, he's almost 24 years on now, solid fireground officer, and he kicked himself for a long time because he thought he did something wrong, and he didn't do anything wrong. Just one of those things where bad things happen to good people on occasion. And last but not least are the 13 points of size up, the hazmat portion of it. It's everywhere. It's obviously becoming more prevalent in the residential setting, meth labs, people who are killing themselves based on an internet cookbook using some pesticides. It's everywhere. No need to belabor it, but you know, if you know a location has hazmats, mark them in your pre-plans. The occupancy will often give you hints, but it's always good to expect the unexpected. You don't know what people do in their house. There's not a lot of control over that, so just be wary of it. Be mindful that it's lurking out there. So as we move into part 2 of this, the initial incident action planning and effective fireground communications, I want you to, the prior hour and 5 minutes, hour and 10 minutes that I've been talking, keep those 13 points in mind as we move through this, because what we're going to do now is talk a little bit about how decision making gets done, some initial incident action planning, and communications, and then if time permits, and I think it will, we'll have a few slides to talk about, hopefully using some of the stuff that we've learned in the beginning part of the program. Here's thought 2. One brave thing, then run like hell. So our rules of engagement, all right, this is a fancy color chart, a lot of words. Basically what it says is high risk operation with a low probability of success. We're not going to put members in harm's way unnecessarily. Right? Not advocating letting the town burn down. I'm just saying be smart about what we do and how we go about attacking this fire. We've had too many firefighters killed in operations where they didn't need to be, places where they didn't need to be, during overhaul after the fire is out. You know, don't let that happen. Don't let that happen to your department, to your crew. All right? But hey, reasonably low risk of firefighter injury or life safety, high opportunity for success, by all means, interior operations. And this kind of breaks it down. You're the first in officer. Are you going to go for the cheese or not? Is the benefit worth the risk? All right. So I'm not a psychologist or anything like that, but we all know if you've taken Instructor 1, Officer 1, there's the 2 types of decision making, and one is the classic decision making model, traditional model where you have the 8 steps, and you have time. You have the luxury of time to think your way through something. Forest fires are great for this, or wildland fires. I mean, yeah, you want to get at it, but hey, what's burning? Trees. All right. So let's take our time, and that's why the wildland folks are so good at large-scale incident management, because they have the time to sit down and think about it and plan it out and attack it. And if if 2,000 acres burn to save 10,000, well, that's okay. You know, it's acceptable. The trees grow back. But we operate more in this model. All right, the naturalistic decision making, your cue-based or RPD, recognition primed, and this is based on you've had success in the past with a similar incident of going about it a similar way, and you're going to employ those same strategies and tactics this time through. And most often, you will come out the same. You will succeed. There's a book out there, and if you're interested in this stuff, I suggest you read it. It's pretty easy to read. It's called Blink, and it's by a guy named Malcolm Gladwell. He's a Canadian, and he writes a bunch of stories. He's got a bunch of good books, but Blink is a really good book, and it's very science-based. And what he talks about is time and time again, science has proven that your first instinct to something is usually the right one, more often than not. Doesn't mean you'll be 100%, but your gut reaction is usually the right one. And they call it, psychologists, occupational psychologists call it thin slicing, meaning you take a very small piece of information and make big decisions off of it. And most of the time, you're right. So if your gut is telling you something about a fire, when you get there, go with your gut. So which is the better method? Well, we have factors we have to think about. The time available to make the decision. How severe is the situation? All right. A hazmat spill is a great example of this. All right. The tanker's flipped over. It's leaking a little bit of bad stuff. All right. Unless it's like flipped over on top of a school bus, you got some time. If it's just laying in the middle of the road, don't rush in. All right. How often does this situation occur to you, to your department? the training and experience level of the officer, and then, as always, and I throw this in there, what do your SOPs or SOGs say? I don't want to leave you with the impression as you go from here that, oh, Chuck Ryan says go with my gut regardless of what the SOP says. Please don't do that. They're there for a reason. They're guidelines. You know, in our department, we have operating manuals for almost every type of structure. Northern Virginia Fire Departments, Arlington, Alexandria, County of Fairfax, City of Fairfax, Metropolitan Washington Airport Authority, all operate from a same sheet of music with respect to different types of structures. Doesn't mean we can't deviate from those, from the set playbook, if you will, as long as it's justifiable and communicated. All right? But if your SOPs or SOGs dictate how you address an issue, please go with that first. So if you're the first in officer, or when you're the first in officer, a lot of people resist this thought because it makes it sound like you're going to be out in the front yard with a clipboard as opposed to inside on the hose line, and that's not it. You are the initial incident commander. Like it or not, in the eyes of the law, the first arriving company officer is the initial incident commander and is subject to the liabilities and responsibilities of that, whether you've formally accepted command or not. So remember your priority of actions, all right? Life safety, incident mitigation, and property conservation in that order. Let's save the lives, let's make this a little bit better, and then let's try to salvage what property we can. And those three priorities are accomplished through your strategies of RECIO. And then the ventilation and salvage thrown in on the end. Okay? So you want to paint a picture. All right? You want to paint a picture. You want to tell, as you arrive on the scene and you've conducted your size up and you're looking at these buildings, you want to paint a picture for incoming units. All right? What do you have? And this is where good radio discipline comes into play, because we all know them. Every department has them. We got the screamers, right? You know, they got a bush on fire in front of the house, and sweet Jesus, you'd think the whole block was off, right? And we giggle, but we all know we have those folks, right? All right? So you got to give, you want to give incoming units and incoming command officers an idea of what's going on and how severe the situation is. And some of that excitement is generated by a lack of experience, a lack of training, or a lack of proper coaching and mentoring. I mean, maybe nobody's ever sat that person down and said, hey, look, Joe, you got to calm down. You know, you take a breath. And it sets the tone and mindset for the initial phases of incident ops. If you're excited, then everybody's excited. And I know there's the analogy of, hey, the trash man doesn't get excited when he comes around the corner and sees a pile of trash in the street, because that's what he's supposed to do, is pick up the trash. Well, I still get excited going to fires. I hope everybody in here does. That's what makes the job fun. All right? The key is to maintain and control your excitement and channel it in a positive fashion. So when you're on that radio and you're given your initial on-scene report, these are some things that I would like to see in all of them, and these are sort of the common things we use in the Northern Virginia region. Water supply and layout. What do you do for a fire situation? What are you doing about water? All right. Are you laying out from the corner of Maple and Elm? Do you need somebody to reverse lay from you to the hydrant somewhere else? Talk about it. And it's best to do that before you get on the scene if you can, so that it doesn't clutter up on-scene communications. What type of structure are we dealing with? Unless you live in a jurisdiction or work in a jurisdiction that every building is exactly the same, then tell us what you're going to. And this is especially helpful to your chief officers, because if you've got a battalion coming in behind you, you know, when I was a battalion chief or as a deputy chief, I've got 400 square miles of county to deal with. I don't know what's at, 126 Edsel Road. The guys at the Edsel Road station know what's there, but I don't know what's there, unless it's a target hazard of some kind. So talk about what kind of structure it is. Single-family dwelling, middle-of-the-road townhome, strip mall, center of the run strip mall, 22-story high-rise, whatever. Tell us what it is. What is evident and where it is. This is the location and extent of the fire. Are you on the scene with, if I hear in a report and it says, engine 2 is on the scene, I've got smoke showing. Okay, that tells me that they've got a fire somewhere. But does it paint a good picture for me? No. It doesn't paint a good picture for me. It doesn't paint a good picture for other incoming units. It doesn't paint a good picture for the incoming incident commander, or the ultimate incident commander, the BC or division chief, whatever you have. You need to talk about what you really see and where it is. Hey, engine 2's on the scene of a 2-story detached single-family dwelling. I've got smoke showing from sides Alpha and Delta, and I've got fire evident in the second floor quadrant D. That tells me, that gives me so much of a better picture of what does engine 2 have? He's got a bedroom fire in a single-family dwelling on the second floor, right? If you roll up and say, I got fire showing, again, that all it tells me is you got a fire. Where is that fire? All right? Because other unit officers are coming in thinking, okay, they got a bedroom fire. That means first priority, I got to get ladders up. All right, we got to get some ventilation. Do we need to force entry? Or if they say, hey, the whole roof and the second floor is off, then the tower company or the truck company officer's thinking, okay, let's position for defensive operations. But just saying smoke or fire showing tells us nothing. That's why you were called. Okay? So this is the time to elaborate a little bit. Don't build the house from the first brick up in your radio report, but tell a little bit about what's going on. What initial actions are you taking? Oh, and before I move to that, when I say what is evident and where, fully involved, okay, be careful with the terms fully involved, heavy fire, and heavy smoke. Fire doesn't weigh anything, smoke doesn't weigh much, all right? And what's heavy fire to the 20-year engine officer and heavy fire to the first day as a lieutenant with the gold badge on are two different things in most instances, all right? So be descriptive in your terminology. The colloquial sense, yeah, we know it means a lot. We got a lot of fire, a lot of smoke. But when you're trying to describe what you're faced with, heavy fire and fully involved. I've been to fires on the first in officer says we're fully involved and we're advancing an 1 3/4 line through the front door. What? No, that's not. One of those two things can't be right. Okay, one of those two things has to be wrong. So if it's fully involved, I would say this structure is pretty damn near fully involved. You have fire on all levels. You've got fire in the front door, fire. I mean, I would not probably call it fully involved, but especially a newer company officer gave that radio report, I'd be accepting of that. All right? So that's my point, is elaborate on what you have. Think about it for a second and then say it. Don't necessarily say the first thing that comes to mind. Your initial actions being taken. And this is especially true for folks that run with short-staffed companies. Tell them where you are, what you're doing, and where you're going. All right. Engine 2's on the scene, gives all the other information. I'm going to advance an 1 3/4 line through the front door, taking it upstairs to attack the fire in the Delta quadrant. Boom. That was said in less than 6 seconds, and it tells everybody who's coming up behind you where you are and what you're doing. And that's very helpful if you get in trouble, so they know where to start looking for you. But just saying, hey, I'm on the scene, advance an 1 3/4, and waiting for other people to show up to see where that 1 3/4 goes is not good in the modern fire service. Right. Orders to incoming units. Some people get a little tight on this. Everybody's supposed to know what they're supposed to know. But if you need something specific done, if you need that tower company or ladder company to get ladders to side Charlie, ASAP, make that your first priority, then say that. If you got a gas-fed fire and you need somebody to get to the meter right away, then say it. Because, and my thought of this is, I know what my training and experience is, and I may know a few other people's, but in my agency with 1,400 people, I can't keep track of everybody's training and experience. I don't know what they know or don't know. So I got to either tell them what to do or I want them to tell others what they want done. And it helps clear the confusion, because we've all been through tailboards or hot washes afterward, and somebody will be talking and you say, well, why didn't you do this? And you say, well, I didn't know you wanted me to do that. Well, I thought you would do it. Well, you didn't tell me to. So eliminate all that. Save the trouble of that. And your additional resource needs. All right, is this going to be a greater alarm assignment? What do you need? Do you need water? Do you need foam? Do you need 5 ambulances? Whatever. Okay? water supply, type of structure, what's evident where, initial actions, special orders to incoming units, additional resource needs, and finally special hazards. Do we have, is the wire drop? Are the wires about to come down? Do we have we have a lot of fires. I'm sure you all do. Fires that start on the deck around the barbecue grill and then burn back into the house. Well, you got a 20-pound propane bottle involved, possibly. All right. Say that if you see it. If you see something, say something. I want to run a couple of audio clips here, and these are clips from my jurisdiction. So I know there's a couple of Fairfax folks in the room, and you may recognize the voices. They all run a couple of minutes, but I want you to, knowing those points about what the initial on-scene report should be, when we listen to these, we'll talk for a minute or so about each, and I promise you I will get you out of here at or before 12:15. About whether they hit the marks. All right. Little background on this fire. This is the actual house that they're looking at here. That's going to be involved in this audio clip. Engine and truck were dispatched for a residential fire alarm, and first engine gets on the scene, and this is what they wound up with.
Fairfax engine 402 from PT. Engine 402 Fairfax. Fill the box. We got fires showing. Side Alpha, second floor. It's a 2-story single family. Give me the assigned camo, please. Engine 402 on 4 Delta.
Go ahead, engine 402.
Okay, I got a fire in the Charlie side. 2-story single family. Fire on the Charlie side. Heavy smoke on all sides, okay?
10-4, fire showing on Charlie's side of a 2-story single-family home, heavy smoke on all sides.
Battalion 4-1 from 25.
10-4.
Tower 430 on scene.
Okay. How'd he do? Pretty good, given what he expected to find going for a residential fire alarm, a ho-hum call. And this is what I'm talking about in our area, about people not knowing anything. This is not out in the middle of nowhere. This is in a pretty densely populated suburban neighborhood. Comes in a residential fire alarm, and the first person that sees the house is on fire is the first arriving engine company. Maybe somebody doesn't like their neighbors. I don't know. But he did pretty good. Little flustered. He was a fairly new officer, kind of a newly minted lieutenant at the time, or newly minted captain. I'm sorry, and he kind of reined it in. All right, he gave a good on-scene report. 2-story single-family dwelling, fire showing side Charlie. He said heavy smoke. I'll give him credit on it. Smoke on all sides, and then he takes his lap and tells everybody what he's going to do. Not bad. I think overall he painted a pretty good picture. I think the battalion chief that was coming into the call had a pretty good idea of what they were faced with. I'm going to let this one run for a little bit. This is into an incident. The operation was already underway, and it's a garden apartment fire. This is about 3 years ago now. The stage being set for this, that we had truly epic snowfall for our region. I think we had back-to-back like 14 or 20-inch snowfalls. It's really unheard of for Northern Virginia. But within a series of 5 or 6 days, we just got pounded with snow to the point where the governor deployed the National Guard into Fairfax County because we couldn't get to most of the calls. So we had National Guard troops in Humvees getting our EMS crews and basically plowing for our fire crews to get to calls. And roll tape.
Battalion 403 is on the scene. I'm on side Alpha. I'll have command at my vehicle.
Battalion 403 on the scene, side Alpha. Will hold command at his vehicle, 1821.
Engine 421 to command. And Engine 440. Could you please access the fire hydrant on Monument Drive? At this point, we've got a couple of snow mounds that's covering our access. I'm just trying to search for a hydrant right now. Hey, hold your traffic, hold your traffic. I have fire on site Charlie on the balcony. Charlie, I find a water supply back there, okay? in engine 415, engine 403. Charlie side. Clear on the 3rd floor, but you're still checking for an occupant. Quickly, I haven't had a wire but yet. Engine 440, engine 441, charge. Fairfax.
Command of 4 Delta.
And all you're raiding the building, I need you to evacuate. Charlie to van. Charlie Division. I've got a firefighter down on the Charlie side of the store.
Command, you direct out a firefighter down on the Charlie side of the building. Mayday called.
Charlie Division, can you give me a little more?
Mayday, mayday, mayday. Engine 421, right bucket. I've been thrown off the 4th floor balcony. I'm in the rear of the structure. I've fallen 3 floors. I believe my left bucket is still inside. Mayday, 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 acknowledge.
Command acknowledges. Mayday.
Okay. I use that clip more for radio discipline than anything else. Not so much for initial on-scene operations because it picks up with the 1st Battalion Chief arriving on the scene. What was your overall impression of the quality of the fireground communications? Pretty poor. Sporadic. The audio is condensed, so the dead spots or the airtime is taken out, but those are the actual transmissions. The bonking, which means people are talking over each other. The driver of engine 440 is blathering on about hydrants being buried under snow mounds. Well, no joke, really. You know, just say, hey, I'm searching for a hydrant. That's all you got to say. The IC knows there's snow piled up 4 feet high or 5 feet high. Just report when you get it. You know, A, report the delay. B, report when you acquire it. Eating up valuable airtime. The IC, anybody knows the IC called for the evacuation tone, and so the Charlie Division officer said, side Charlie to command, and then we lose the radio for 20 seconds while the evacuation tones are going off. And then you heard the firefighter's Mayday transmission, and like he said, he had been thrown, the ceiling came down, and he got thrown off the balcony on the 4th floor, and but for the fact that there was 40 inches of snow on the ground, it might have killed him. But pretty much a textbook Mayday. Under those circumstances, to the point where he's reporting where his fellow crew member might still be in the structure. In the interest of time, I'm going to bypass a couple of these. I want you to listen to this one. This is another one, a fairly short clip. Engine company dispatched for engine and truck for an odor of natural gas in a neighborhood.
Your traffic.
415. We're on the scene. House fully involved. This will be a defensive structure. All right, we have a hydrant seat. All right. House has been exploded. It'll be a defensive attack. Let's start a second alarm.
10-4, engine 415. 5415 on scene, house fully involved. With a defensive attack. Going to go ahead and start a second alarm. Battalion 403 direct. Battalion 403 strike. Also, Battalion 403, we've already started 3 additional med units since we were getting reports the house was occupied. 2057.
Operations Deputy en route.
10-4 ops deputy, 2057.
Okay. That house, another incident like the first one, dispatched for one thing, arriving to find another. This officer's a good friend of mine. He's a fellow New Yorker. I give him a lot of razzing about this call, but how was his on-scene report? Kind of disjointed, right? A little rattled. Exactly. This gentleman up here raised a very good point. You could tell that he sounded and he felt overwhelmed, and he was trying to keep it in. He's trying to keep the lid on the popcorn popper a little bit. But you don't expect to roll up the street and see a house in splinters. And again, dispatch for one thing. This is in the middle of a crowded suburban neighborhood. House blows to smithereens, and the only 911 call was from somebody reporting an odor of gas. And as it turned out, it was the day after Christmas, and as it turned out, there was nobody inside the structure. I'm bypass that one. We talked about the importance of taking a lap, seeing all sides of the structure, noting changes in grade and reporting those. It's the same structure, presenting three very different views of the same fire. This is a fire also in Loudoun County, Virginia, in the Sterling area. Company 11's on the scene, 611's there. Good positioning. Let's talk about this picture for one quick second here. What do we notice about the parking lot? Empty, but for one car, right? So what day of the week you think it might be? Business, Monday through Friday, business day. People are gone and at work. All right. If this was a weekend, Saturday or Sunday morning or afternoon, there'd be far more vehicular traffic around. All right. Good positioning by the engine. Good positioning by the tower. All right. Everything's looking good. What do they look like they have? Bedroom fire on the second floor of a middle-of-the-run townhome, right? Right. Okay. You can run all the lines you want in the front door of that townhome, and you're not putting that fire out yet. All right. You have to get to the seat of the fire, and you have to at least start knocking down that exterior fire before you can effectively combat the interior fire, because it's just going to keep coming back at you, either till you beat it down or until it runs out of fuel, one of the two, or the house burns away from you. All right? That's why it's important to take a look at the back of the house. And again, what do we do in training? When we go up to the training academy, we run through our standard evolutions. The burn building is set up. We always go in through it's the same thing we did in rookie school. It's the same thing that's been drilled into us time and time again. When we do our standard evolutions, we go in the front door. Because, hey, in our minds, it's the training building. We all know where we're going to find this fire. We know how many steps it is up to the landing, and everybody's been through this. Point is, see the rear, notice the change in grade, whether you have a basement or not, whether you have exterior access to the basement or not. Is the basement involved, in which case the whole building is exposed? Wide variety of things going into your size up, again, with the location and extent of fire. So let's look at a couple of incidents here in the last 5 minutes or so, and we'll talk a little bit about them. I'm going to ask you, if you wanted one piece of information, if you could have one piece of information about this building, what would you want to have? Occupants. Okay, that's a lot of fire. Let's talk about the building construction. What's working to our advantage here? It's got firewalls. Okay, each unit is separated by a firewall. All right, built probably mid 70s, maybe early 80s. So we got a little time to play in there. What you're looking at the size of the building. I mean, it's connected from one end. Where's my little laser? Here we go. Connected from one end to the other. Are you going to run a line around the back of that building? Not feasible. Okay, not feasible. And I can tell you there's no vehicular access to the rear. So what are you going to do to get a line to the rear? Go through the house next door. All right, sorry folks, pardon me, coming through, right? Hey, the place next door is on fire, you got to get out. Because again, similar to the townhome fire we saw where the fire is on side Charlie, you don't know obviously you got a lot of fire, heavy involvement there, but until you knock it down, you're not going to do much else. So that's an exterior attack, big fire, big water, 2.5 line, maybe, well, they're not going to get a deck gun in there at that point, but quick exterior knockdown and then move in for mop-up. Washington, D.C. Fire Department, same thing. Where are you going to commit your resources for this one? Primarily. Where's your greatest life hazard most likely? Ground floor, first floor, right. There's nobody alive up here. I'm sorry, but I'm writing them off. Our people are not fire walkers, okay? They're not like the airport firefighters with the silver moon suits where they can just go waltzing in through the fire. No. Exterior knockdown, do your search, fire attack on the first floor. You certainly want to get a knockdown on the second floor, but you're going to employ different tactics to get to it. We'll skip that video. What do you notice about this townhouse? Right. Back to the reading smoke stuff, the Dave Dodson, right? Volume, velocity, color, and density. That's a deep-seated fire in this house, burning to beat the band. What else do you know? Where do you think the fire is? Where's this smoke coming from? You got smoke down low, right. Down low in the rear of the house. All right, down low in the rear of the house. Good. Can you get this fire? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Again, now end unit townhouse, it's no big deal to run around the back and take a look. And it's easy to get a line back there if you need it. But you got to take that look. You got to take that look. But definitely, yeah, hot fire, an advancing fire, but definitely a winnable one. Same thing with this one. A winnable fire appears to be. Certainly appears to be. Residential structure, certainly occupied. You know, they have the pennants out and the flags and yay team, right? Attic, it's in the attic, most likely. I mean, there's not even any smoke hardly coming out of the bedroom window frame here, so winnable fire. Quick look at this one. We talked about the weather, right? Snow on the ground, ladder placement. I'm not so sure I would put somebody on that roof up. Yeah. And my man here's probably been up to the dinner plate a few times. So, yeah, and no SCBA on. I mean, I'm not throwing stones, but this is obviously a derelict building. This picture is from City of Detroit, where they have a lot of these, and not worth committing members to the interior unnecessarily. Right, yeah. This is a three-picture sequence. I want you to look especially at the folks on the roof. Okay, I was too short to ever serve on a truck company, and I don't profess to be a big truck guy, but I don't see any value for those guys on the roof, especially when the back half of the house is, has it vented itself already? Okay, so I know it's cool to cut a hole in a roof, but why? And I've gone through this when I was coming up as a company officer. I went through this with my guys. That I always worked in combination houses where we had engine and truck, so I was very lucky in that regard. And there was always the running battle then, not now, about, hey, if I'm doing roof ops, I don't need my SCBA on. Well, I beg to differ, because what you're going to see here in a second would indicate why they might have wanted to have had it, or they might have wished they had. Okay. So, fire is well advanced in the rear, has extended up the back, gotten into the house. This is classic stuff we see every day. And now we're chasing three guys off the roof of not a bad pitch, but a steep enough one. And they've got to try to get down that ladder before the rest of it goes away.
You notice they moved the ladder too?
Yeah, they did move the ladder. And this is the ultimate outcome. Point is, as you're doing your size up, whether you're engine off, and this is mainly focused on initial engine company officer stuff, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what rig you arrive on. Think about this stuff and where your assets are best utilized. It's kind of like your retirement account. All right, put the stuff where it's going to make the most money for you. And the same thing with that. Three guys on a peak roof to cut a hole in for a fire that's already vented is not worth the time. And we saw that photo. I don't want to hold you up from lunch. I'll show you this last picture. This is a dentist's house in Northern Virginia. Be good to your kids. They may be a dentist someday. First arriving engine showed up, and you see they're putting a ladder up here on the lower left. There's a crew. There were 3 separate maydays called in this fire. What happened was workers doing HVAC work in the attic started the stuff off, burned the truss roof. When they got there, they had like a dinner plate-sized hole of fire coming through the roof. Didn't look like a big deal. It's obviously spread very rapidly through that lumber yard up there. And there was a very heavy chandelier here that came down, separated the crews, severed the hose line, and there were 3 separate maydays within this McMansion at the same time, requiring 1 rescue out of the front, 1 off the aerial, and 2 off the deck in the rear. All right. Hey, listen, wait a second. Thank you very much. I jammed this into an hour 45 minutes. I normally teach this in an expanded fashion. But this is what it's all about, guys and gals. This is about making the right decisions or the best decisions you can on the information you have so you can do the fun stuff and going home at the end of the day to your family and loved ones. It's what I care about. It's for my folks. It's what I care about for you guys. And I thank you for being here today and hanging with me through this. I hope you got at least a little something out of it. And if you have any questions or anything, feel free to email me at either of those addresses. Thank you.